Bing bong. I am live with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast. And for those listening on any podcasting 2.0 apps such as Fountain, thank you so much. We had sats streamed, but no boost from the last episode. So I do appreciate those sats streamed. If you have a comment or something like that along the lines of the last episode, feel free to reach out and let me know what you think about it. Be happy to hear some feedback and other things like that, and kind of help create that circular economy. Shout out to Bitcoin Bay and here in the Tampa Bay area and Wes and those guys. They're working really hard to create that circular economy in a local community, which I'll kind of get into with my guest here today. But if you're in the Tampa Bay area, they do have a business workshop that will be going on a week from Sunday. So today is the 13th as we're recording this. So I believe the Sunday will be the 23rd. So 23rd, you can check the Eventbrite if you want to buy a ticket. I believe it's only like $5 to $20. Come out, socialize. They'll be going over taxes, accounting, storage, all that kind of stuff for any small business that is interested in potentially bringing on and getting on that Bitcoin standard. And then shout out to my sponsors. First, the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world, Bitcoin Miami 2023. It's almost about a month away at this point. So if you haven't gotten your ticket yet, use promo code GreenCandle in all caps, or there'll be a link in the show notes as well. Use that and buy your ticket. See me in Miami. I'll be there hanging out. Come on and join. We can grab a beer, grab lunch, do something like that. Hang out with a bunch of Bitcoiners. There's going to be thousands and thousands of Bitcoiners all congregated in Miami, and we'll all be hanging out and having a good time. So be sure to come down there and join. And then lastly, shout out to codl.co, that's codl.co, for the best punch plates in the game. If you don't have your Bitcoin in cold storage now, what the hell are you doing? Get it off an exchange and use a punch plate. They actually just sent me some of their new punch plates here. I'm previewing them. So awesome material. Codl.co, use promo code GreenCandle again, similar to the one at used by Bitcoin Miami Conference, and get 10% off. And then now, I do have a very special guest. He's in the waiting room. He is from KNC Cattle. It's Cole Bolton. Cole, how you doing today, man? I think you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
That's awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So, Cole, I don't know if we've actually formally met in person or anything like that, but I got the recommendation. I heard you spoke at Bitcoin Commons maybe a week or so ago. And you're helping build up that beef initiative in the central Texas area. So for those who don't know you or don't know KNC Cattle or anything like that, why don't you give us the spiel on who you are and how you got to where you're at today?
So yes, I am the owner of KNC Cattle. We're based out of Austin, Texas. We raise all of our beef on our ranches, and I kind of about 3, 4, 5 years ago, I started our company where we started raising all of our beef and selling directly to the public. COVID hit, and it was just kind of a perfect storm. We were using a bunch of local processors and getting our beef harvested and shipping it out. We ship to 48 out of 50 states, so we're not just in Texas. And then a few years ago, I started designing and engineering plans along with a partner of mine, and we opened our own USDA processing facility. So now we control our animal from conception to harvest, and so it's been able, to give us a competitive advantage. But furthermore, just kind of helped give purpose of what I was doing on a much larger scale, because there are a lot of small farms and ranches that are selling directly to the public. I wanted to be able to grow to scale and to reach more homes with healthy food and make sure that we also keep it cost effective, because that's one of the hardest things when you buy direct. Sometimes the price point gets out of a normal person's budget, and we've been able to manage that as close as we can. But proud to be part of that, and thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. So, obviously there's been like a big push, it seems, kind of intertwined, kind of not, I don't know, with the Bitcoin community. when it comes to, getting your own local food, especially when it comes to meat, right? There's been a big issue when it comes to, packaging, distribution, all that kind of stuff in the meat industry. I know Texas Slim, who's been on the pod previously as well, who's kind of, outlined some of that. So from your perspective, what are some of the bigger issues that we have right now in that industry? And what are you kind of trying to fix with KNC Cattle and that like local distribution and kind of that local feel?
Well, Slim, I'm also a partner in the Beef Initiative as well. I was one of the founding members along with Jason and JP. And, our vision with that is very similar, no different really than the mission statement of what we're trying to do with KNC. What's happening is, with COVID, we saw all these big corporate companies lock down and then people didn't have access to food. What we see in a lot of these small communities is as poverty is taken over, the ability for clean eating and for higher quality meats and vegetables and what have you becomes more scarce. So what we're doing, where my company's model is a little bit different, not only will we ship to you, we also do meetups. So we intentionally target these cities: Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Fort Worth, and we'll allow people to pre-order. We bring it to them. They come meet us. We set up a few meet points, literally meet points. We call them our meetups, but they can come and pick up their stuff, save money on shipping, get to shake the rancher's hand, and get to know who we are and what we stand for and what we're about. And it's been a really interesting grassroots movement. It lined up perfectly with Bitcoin because it's decentralized. It's about exchanging value for value. And we've been able to build such a deep network with it. And we are one of the first companies that I know that took Bitcoin as a source of payment. And, the Bitcoin community really jumped on the bandwagon with us, but really, really supported us. And so I've definitely dug in deeper and really catered to that community because they understood the exchange of value, which a lot of folks don't. They want, something of high quality, but they want it as cheap as they can. And sadly, ranchers operate on such a low margin. I'm trying to recreate what distribution looks like, both at the local and national level, so that we can afford to keep spreading, and hopefully folks can feel more confident in what they're getting and knowing the true story of what's behind them. In a nutshell, I'm sure we're going to cover some of the issues, but one of the biggest one that is concerning people right now is the mRNA. We're seeing a proposal in a couple different states where these drug companies are trying to come in and put mRNA injections into our vaccine program for cattle. And so I haven't done TikTok in a year, but I thought, I really need to reach a lot of people in a short time. So out of nowhere, I made one last week and the damn thing went viral. But where we explained to people what strain, what vaccine holds the mRNA strand, is it approved, is it not approved, is it in our meat, is it not, and just really being transparent, because that's one of the things our industry hasn't been good at, is really touching base with the customers and letting consumers not only know how to cook meats, but really understand how they're raised. And so we spend more of our time educating, way more than we really do with sales. I'd say 90% is spent on education and 10% is actually spent selling. So yeah, those are some of the big hot topics that we battle the most.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like, it's not only in, humans where we're worried about like what's, being injected in our bodies now and other things like that. But, I think there's been like you've kind of pointed out, a big push towards understanding what's really in our food and other things like that. So, I guess when it comes to these regulations in some of these states, kind of pushing for some of these, maybe mRNA vaccines inside of cattle and other things like that, like, how did we get to this place? Like, why are some of these regulators kind of pushing towards, maybe fabricating some of this stuff? Is it, maybe a cost thing where it is expensive to, have a lot of farms and other things like that? So they're trying to maybe, I don't know, clone meat or something like that? Or, and from your vantage point, like as somebody who's directly in the industry, what is the main issue behind all of this? And why is there such a push for, injecting all this kind of crazy things into, animals, which in turn into our food?
Well, that's a great question. I think kind of a good answer as an example is to really understand where it comes from. So the mRNA strain would be put into a modified live version of what's called the IBR shot. And IBR is used to treat bovine respiratory disease, bovine viral disease, and a few others. Typically, when you bring cattle from a lot of different areas, like if you buy from several different auction barns and bring them all to one area to grow them and then inevitably fatten them, or several different ranches send them all to a big feed yard, and so you're bringing all these organisms from and exposure to different viruses from so many different geographical locations. Typically, ranchers would vaccinate with an IBR program. Well, where we have an advantage and small producers have an advantage is, we're not bringing cattle from different geographical areas. They're all out of the same herd, the same genetics, all coming to one unified place. And so we don't have to worry about giving that shot. Um, the coronavirus has been around in cattle for 30 years. It's nothing new. It just the media doesn't present it that way. So yeah, with that being said, it does make me wonder why all of a sudden we need to put that into a vaccine program. Yeah, there is some death risk that we battle with BRD and BVD, which is why we give an IBR vaccine as an industry. But as we focus more and more on decentralization, the need for that is less and less. There are other ways in which we can treat cattle, and that have kind of been misconceptions. A lot of folks for years they were putting medicated antibiotics into feed, and that was to help a lot of these calves as they were weaning at a young age not get sick and get pneumonia or shipping stress. Well, the next thing you know, it turns and specifically the poultry industry and the pork industry started getting a reputation for keeping in the feed the whole life of the animal, whereas the beef wasn't necessarily doing that. In fact, it's almost, if a person wants to try to get medicated feed for, let's say they had 30 little calves they had to pull off their mom weighing 150 pounds, it's an act of God to try to even get those medications for the feed. So I think the mRNA deal is pretty stupid. I don't understand the need for it. You will have some risk and loss, but you're going to have that in anything. From our perspective, it won't impact me because I don't have to do it. And we don't need the vaccine with the way we do our program.
I gotcha. Well, let's dive into that. So, you've kind of alluded to decentralization aspect. So, yeah, like explain kind of like your process. Like, are you essentially kind of getting a bunch of small local farmers kind of in a community, and that's what you're having under the KNC Cattle umbrella? Or do you have just like kind of one farm that you have a bunch of fat cattle on, and that's kind of how you operate the business?
Well, I've been fortunate. I grew up in the cattle business, and I wanted to figure out a way. I was always told since I was a kid, if you want to make a living, don't stay in the industry, because it's gotten so hard and the margins are so thin. With that, I was helping to find a way to where I could not only make it profitable for myself, but hopefully I could reach out to other ranchers, and we all sort of co-op in essence, where we join forces, we follow the same bloodlines, same protocols, so we can give what the industry has always wanted, and that's consistency. And so what I've done, I have a partner in the processing facility, Two Bar C Ranches. They have some of the best Angus genetics in the country. And so we joined both of our calf crops together over the last 3-4 years and have expanded to where now I have my in-laws, my parents, they all run several hundreds of heads. So now we've put together a couple thousand head. And as our demand continues to rise, I hope to be able then to go to more and more ranches, put them on a shot protocol program, put them on, because all of our beef is free of antibiotics, free of hormones and implants. And we want to get more ranchers that want to follow those same protocols to go in the program with us, because inevitably it'll help them make more money, allow us to reach a much larger community with what we're doing.
Yeah, and you could definitely taste the quality. So I actually just I'm like in the process of finishing my first beef box from the Florida Beef Initiative, because I'm out here in Tampa, and like I've been eating it like essentially almost every meal, and you can definitely taste the quality compared to I mean, some other grocery store, so to speak. I don't want to toss any of them under the bus or anything
Sure.
like that, but you could definitely taste it, and depending on how well you can cook it as well, it is a great, I guess, movement to kind of get behind, and it really makes me feel better, I guess, as a whole and everything else. Um, but the reason I brought up the decentralization aspect and you kind of having a bunch of, I guess, farms and ranches under your umbrella. I don't know if you heard about this, or saw this kind of going. I saw it kind of going viral today on Twitter, but there was an explosion at a ranch in Dimmitt, Texas, where about 18,000 cows got killed in this explosion. And it seems like, the decentralization aspect of what you guys are doing, maybe a couple hundred heads or something like that. If you want, I could show the video to you as well, for those.
Yeah. While we were talking, I was having to check this out because I actually lived in Dimmitt several
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, so give me one quick second and I'll pull it up here. So there's this yeah, you can see my screen here, but um I'll pull up the video. They just kind of go through this entire explosion area here. So I mean, obviously there's a ton of cows just kind of like located in here, but it seems like, you know, obviously this is a major catastrophe, and I hope that this doesn't happen to anybody's farm or anything like that. But the decentralization aspect of what you guys are doing too kind of avoids this in a sense, right? Because it's as like Bitcoiners kind of say, there's a single point of failure, there could be something that happens where something like this can happen, right? Where it could be detrimental for your entire business. So is that a kind of a strategy that you seem to want to keep employing, where you have a bunch of maybe small to mid-sized farms kind of around the state of Texas and around, maybe even around the country, where you can then, do everything from raising the cattle to processing and the distribution, all in kind of these, I want to call them like micro facilities, I guess.
Right. Well, that's a big part of the mission of the beef initiative. As far as my strategy, like for instance, this was a dairy, and you're exactly right. They lost almost 18,000 heads. So what that's going to do to the milk industry over the next 6 months, it's going to impact all consumers. Um, for us, that's exactly what we do. I've been fortunate. We practice regenerative agriculture, rotational grazing, high intensity grazing on our pastures. So we don't want large amounts of animals in a very small confined area. We want to give them room to roam, and we want to utilize our soil. And our model is different. When you go to the feed yards, their model is seeing how much weight and how much gain you can put on for the cheapest amount. For us, we're looking at how much money can we make per acre. So we want to utilize our forage as much as we can, which is the cheapest possible way to naturally grow a cow. For us, that's exactly what we're doing. We want to continue to grow with more and more ranchers privately in these rural areas, to where we can control that narrative. And it also alleviates a lot of the risk, because another topic that has come up is over the last 24 months, there have been over 100 and something food manufacturing facilities that have burned down or catastrophically blown up or disappeared. And we're trying to avoid any of those situations to the best of our ability, so it doesn't impact our business structure.
Yeah, and it also kind of helps like bring on that local community aspect, right? Where a lot of Bitcoiners talk about the circular economy. So it seems like obviously you and Slim kind of have maybe similar backgrounds. I don't know too much about yours, but you did mention that you were kind of raised in the cattle industry. So let's bring that to Bitcoin then. So kind of how did you get involved into Bitcoin? And I guess, obviously the decentralization aspect and a lot of the aspects of the Bitcoin community kind of resonate with the beef initiative. So talk about your experience with that and kind of, I guess, getting ingrained with the Bitcoin community when it comes to the beef initiative.
Yeah, it was just an awesome situation. I met Texas Slim. He was wanting to do the beef initiative, and I was already kind of in line doing it on a small scale, and could help that grow. So with that, I was able to meet some really awesome people, Marty Bent, Adam Curry, Unchained Capital was instrumental in me jumping on board, and Oshi. And all of them kind of just hand fed me information. They all came to the ranch to buy beef, taught me how to set up my first wallet, how to do my first Bitcoin transaction. And I knew a little bit about Bitcoin. I'm a community banker by trade, which is quite hilarious if you're a Bitcoiner wondering how in the hell I'm in this industry. But it made a lot of sense to me because, people have asked me, it's funny, I'm asking them advice about Bitcoin because I'm brand new, and they're like, man, are you okay? How are you? I started last November, so I got to see the 62,000, 63,000. And then all of a sudden we're back down to 17, 18. And they're like, man, how are you handling it? And I'm like, the same way I handle before I switched my model. I'm a 4th generation rancher, and we did commercial cattle. And that's, I've watched every daggum up and down with the commodities market. I've lost money with futures. I've had contracts. I've had to buy margin calls. I know all about it. And this was kind of immune to it, sadly. So it was kind of a perfect fit because ranchers, we already know about that. But being able to, put an investor money into something, most ranchers make their money off the real estate. And especially where I'm at in Austin, I use cattle as a utilization tool for our real estate investments. I've been fortunate. I have a lot of leases with developers. So while they try to go permit, plat land, it takes them 2 years. We go in and cut hay and run cattle and keep them under ag exemption. And so it was this intertwining network that just made absolute sense to me because, we can appreciate the value now, not just on our real estate, but we can hold and invest it right back in from our cattle and our earnings and allow it to sit there and build its own value.
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't realize that it was kind of more on the I guess the real estate opposed to the cattle, the product, or everything like that too. Because it seems like from the way that the industry has gone, just from hearing what you've said and talking to other people that that there's this push for, like, I guess local communities avoiding those vaccinations and other things like that, that it seems like the main product has been the cattle, where they've been kind of, I guess, essentially trying to churn as many cattle as possible, kind of push that out. But you're kind of outlining the other way, right, where it's like, hey, we're trying to get most that we can out of the land, opposed to the cattle, which is interesting, just like because I'm laying this out right now and just kind of thinking about it, where it's like, if that is not your main product, and it is strictly just something to help subsidize the land, it doesn't really make sense to me to take a ton of shortcuts, which is kind of like what you guys are laying out with the beef initiative, which still like blows my mind to hear why that there has been such a push to essentially take some of those shortcuts and maybe fabricate some of these cows or whatnot to try to get the most out of them.
And it sucks because the industry has been subsidized so long by the U.S. government. One of my favorites is when someone's like, okay, we want to buy some ground beef. Well, you've now bought through the Florida Beef Initiative. The taste profile is completely different. And it has a lot to do with the treatment of the animals. It has a lot to do with how they're raised. It has a lot to do with breeding. It also has a whole lot to do with aging beef, because typically the meat you get at a grocery store, within 48 to 72 hours, they've already been killed, dehydrated, cut up, packaged, sent down the road. Well, typically when you're buying local, you're able to age beef for 14 to 21 days, and it gives such a more rich profile. And it looks different. You can see pictures compared to supermarkets. It smells different. It doesn't have that sour, nasty smell that it has, and usually it cooks much cleaner. And it's been hard because people want to be like, well, I can buy ground beef at the grocery store for $4, but you charge $5.50. Well, yeah, we're trying to change to where we can actually let the cattle earn a revenue versus having to rely so heavily on that real estate model. So now hopefully we can have both working for us instead of just one.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense, right? And so, that there has been, that push for that, but there's also, I guess, in a sense, the argument about distribution, right? Where it isn't as convenient maybe to go to these, local meetups or maybe even ship around nationally. So, when it comes to that issue and kind of bringing some farmers on and saying like, hey, we're going to go to this local meetup, and this is where you can meet up with people once a week, once a month, whatever, to sell beef boxes or sell, what have you. Is that kind of a hurdle that you have to get over when bringing on other ranchers, or are they more excited, I guess, to kind of meet some of their customers and really, shake their hand, so to speak?
I think a lot of them are, a lot of them honestly aren't necessarily as involved in much in the transaction because we've been helping broker that, and we've spent the time, connecting with the customer base. But I think more and more of them are starting to be more receptive because they're realizing now they're not just having to be a commodity. Now they can actually bring a commodity, have the product, be the face of their own brand, and building that relationship has helped a lot of them better understand what their value is. Because for the last 15 years, our value's only been as good as what a feed yard, well, not a feed yard, a corporate packer said we're worth. And we've let them dictate our industry for so long that it just basically seems as if we're irreplaceable. You see all these large factory farms coming into place. You see corporate America buying up the smaller grazing pastures. I mean, Bill Gates owns the most land in the U.S. and he's very pro small community, right? And so I think a lot of them take so much pride in that, and we want to save an industry that sadly is dying. People still have to eat, but they're looking at alternatives. They're looking at fake meats. They're looking at different ways in which you get your food sources, and we want to stay ahead of the curve and have communication with consumers before they make the decision which direction they go.
Yeah, you brought up fake meat, and I kind of want to get into that because it seems like there's been a push too, not only to, I guess, inject our current meat sources, whether it's, beef, poultry, whatever, with all kinds of hormones and other things like that, whether it's to make the meat last longer on the shelf or do other things, that's neither here nor there. But there's also been a push to, fake meat, some of these like Impossible burgers or other things like that. Maybe even sticking bugs in some of these patties or other things. And why do you think that's the new push? Because it seems to me like just from like an outsider, like kind of looking into this industry, like when I go down the shelf, it's like this veggie burger that I'm going to buy that's frozen or in a an aisle, that seems to be more processed than the meat that I would buy. But it seems like, the narrative is almost flipped, that the meat industry is processing so much of the food and everything like that. So you need to go to this healthier, I guess, more processed in my eyes, veggie burger. So why do you think that there's that push?
Well, first, a lot of it came down to money. Originally, the way they marketed it is that it would be more efficient, more globally less impactful of CO2 and would save the environment. Then they wanted to push that it was more cost effective. But one of the beauties of it is you look at these companies that were doing it and they've lost their ass. Their earnings are down. One, consumers realize the taste profile, and these companies have blatantly admitted it. I watched a deal the other day where Bill Gates basically point blank said, look, our soy burgers they don't taste that great yet, but we're working on it. We're going to fix it. So, I think although they brought it into the market and we're having to compete with it, I'm not as worried about that as much anymore because consumers spoke and said, look, this tastes like crap. The hardest part is more of a lifestyle choice. And I'm as guilty as anyone. I travel all day long. There are days where I eat like crap because I'm in a hurry. And so many families, when they get home at night, the last thing they want to do is spend 30 minutes cooking. But those are also, folks that are trying to kind of bring that family culture back into their lifestyle where they spend time at a dinner table are more prone to spend 30 minutes cooking versus stopping and getting a McDonald's cheeseburger or grabbing a veggie burger, throwing it in the oven for 5 seconds and moving on. They're willing to spend that time and really, invest back into their family and And two, just the overall health benefits are so much better than processed foods. Natural meats, natural vegetables, exact same way. When you eat from the true source of where it comes from in a natural way, there's lots of studies. I can quote them all day long. Not as good as Texas Slim does, but um, that are really showing that inevitably, high cholesterol wasn't from eating red meat necessarily. Actually, eating natural red meat can be better for you. We see all these folks that are going straight carnivore, and their muscle mass, their health is through the charts, but all depends on what they eat. Most of them are eating directly from a ranch that's not, that hasn't had any of that additive crap put into it. And that's one of my favorite things to show is like it. I'm sure you've seen it on social media. Someone did a side by side comparison where they took a pack of ground beef that's bright red from the grocery store. They took a pack of ground beef that came from a local ranch and it's like a dark, rich red. Part of that's because most of us are vacuum sealing. So naturally, you're taking the oxygen out of a package, and it does temporarily change the color alteration. When you open the package, it does bloom back up. But a lot of folks don't realize they're putting gases at times into packages to carry the shelf life longer. One of my favorites is people will call the meat market and be like, "I will never ever get frozen beef." Well, when you cryovac, it doesn't affect the quality if you know how to cook. I don't mean that insulting, but we have some chefs, and I've worked with enough of really large chefs. They freeze product, they age product, they do all the same things. Not saying they don't want fresh primals. There is something with that fresh ribeye that does make a difference. But when you cryovac and freeze them with proper preparation, they still eat as good. So, kind of going back to your question, sorry, got on a little tangent there, but inevitably, it comes down to making consumers realize: do we want the U.S. only spends less than 10% of their income on food, whereas most other countries average 35 to 40%. So do we want to invest more in healthy foods versus insurance? It comes down to what consumers feel more comfortable with. They want less health risk, probably should eat better. If they want to keep paying medical bills, then maybe don't.
Yeah, exactly. And, I agree with you 100% when it comes to that study. I think I remember like looking deep into it, and, I think it's still kind of taken as truth to some people where it's like, hey, if you're eating all this red meat, you're going to have, bad cholesterol. You're going to have, check your heart and all this other kind of things. Like it's really bad for you. And there's just been kind of this overall, it seems like a media narrative that eating red meat is bad for you initially, but it seems like that narrative's kind of shifting. Maybe I'm in my little Bitcoin bubble, or so to speak, but it does seem like more people that I know that are even outside of Bitcoin are kind of moving towards that carnivore type diet, or eating a lot more red meat or eating steak and kind of moving that way. Do you think that that's going to be a trend that kind of continues going on as people are kind of waking up, as you kind of described, to this poor tasting Impossible Burgers and other things like that?
I think as long as we can stay competitive in the market and still have a price point that fits the average person's budget, yeah, I think it'll keep pushing. Um, it's real similar to what miners are dealing with on Bitcoin. I mean, you're taking the same harassment about environmental impact of mining and how it's depleting natural resources. Yet the same guy that's posting the narrative, whether it's Bill Gates or some others, they're flying around in a jet that produces 10 times more carbon than what a cow fart or a machine hooked up to a wind turbine generating Bitcoin, or, mining is, but they have their own narratives that they twist to their own advantage. And if we can get enough people to come together and really stand for what we're doing, and finally just step up to corporate America and say enough. We're tired of this. You've been controlling us with our health for a long time. We want to take that back. Well, then, I mean, that makes sense. Going back to your question, why do they want to put all this stuff in our food? Why are they looking at mRNA? Why are they looking at this? I mean, I'm not going to be accused of being a conspiracy theorist, but I do think there's ways in which you can control populations easier. And I think that's kind of the answer to the question you asked me earlier.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the kind of the control aspect of it too. But kind of creating these decentralized like local communities seems like kind of I guess the way to go. Whether that's creating a a circular economy with Bitcoin, kind of shaking your rancher's hand and all this kind of movement. So, how are you seeing that kind of unfold in Austin and kind of the Central Texas area? I mean, obviously there's a huge Bitcoin community going on in Austin with, Pleb Lab and Bitcoin Commons. So shout out to Carr and all those guys that are, doing the damn thing out there in Austin. But it seems like, they're really kind of rallying behind this movement, whether it's the Beach Initiative or Bitcoin, and they're all kind of commingled in a sense. So, as somebody that's in the thick of it and kind of, going through the whole thing with everybody, how do you kind of see that community developing, and where do you see it kind of going in the next year or two?
And big shout out to Carr. The guy shows so much about product on Twitter. He's been like one of my biggest fans. He's awesome. It is so moving to me because I was a little bit closed-minded, not knowing Bitcoin. I've said this on a few podcasts, so I hope none of your listeners want to shoot me with this comment, but not understanding Bitcoin and had been in the finance industry, I just had a brief idea of what it was. So when I started getting integrated with the community, my original thought was, look, there's just a bunch of tech nerds. They're probably all a bunch of Californians. I had my own opinions of what that nature was going to look like in the community. But come to find out, so many of them, their moral values lined up eye to eye with what I stand for. We're just from different geographic areas or different hobbies and interests. But it's been such a welcoming group that we joke. A good friend of mine, Matt, he's helped me so much in Bitcoin, and I tell him he's the only person from California I'll introduce to all my cowboy friends. But he was so understanding and could relate to people regardless of our lifestyles. And the whole community's been that way because we're all just trying to support each other. I have seen that network grow, and it's crazy because whether it's Pleb Lab or Bitcoin Commons, I have people coming into our processing plant that have heard us on podcasts or what have you, and they're trying to pay in Bitcoin at my meat market. And they live 50, 60 miles outside of Austin and had no clue who Bitcoin Commons was or the Pleb Lab. They didn't know there was a huge community of it. And so we have watched so many more of them all come together, and they're like, we can fix the money. We can fix our food systems. We can all come together. We can join in on political ideas. We can stay away from them. But we all have one general goal in mind, and that's the overall security of our own wealth, our own families, and our own health. And it has just been an amazing alignment. I could never have imagined.
Yeah, and it seems like, it's all kind of around that personal responsibility, right? I mean, just like truly understanding, like, one, where your money is, like taking complete ownership of that when you can do that strictly through Bitcoin, right? I mean, decentralization aspect, cold storage, all that kind of stuff, obviously great. Then it seems like there's kind of a push towards the fitness industry as well, getting in shape, understanding like, hey, I got one body, like, let me get it out there and move. And then, once I do that, I need to be able to replenish my body, right? So what I'm really putting in is super important. And so that push towards, really understanding that and the food industry and everything like that. And it seems like, as much as, some people maybe growing up or family members or what have you have kind of wanted to avoid the whole money talk, it seems like it's all kind of intertwined and interconnected when you really take a step back and dive into, the fiat monetary system and kind of, you see where the incentives lie. And, kind of like you said, when it comes to Bitcoin, I get it. It is kind of intimidating to some people at first. And you definitely think like, hey, this could be some sort of tech mumbo jumbo. What is this funny money? I don't really understand it and everything like that. But, when you kind of take a step back and understand like the people that are in Bitcoin and see really where their values lie, and they really just want to, create a better place to live for themselves and, their family and everything like that. And really, help everybody out. And it seems like they're extremely generous community as a whole. And, I hope to see more out of KNC Cattle. So, on that note, as you're kind of connecting with more Bitcoiners and connecting with more people just in the Central Texas area and beyond, what do you kind of see for KNC Cattle going forward? Like, what is your mission? Are you trying to, stay local in Texas, or are you trying to maybe expand in a few other states?
Well, first and foremost, I want to stay in our immediate footprint and service our own communities. So I'm really targeted around Central Texas. We are going to continue stretching our footprint to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Fort Worth, and some of the other bigger cities because there is a huge market. We haven't stopped shipping. We will still ship all across the country, but I want to really focus on servicing my immediate area and work with other ranchers and other states through the beef initiative to get them to build their own communities, their own networks, and help, share the highs, the lows, the expensive education I've had as we've designed all of this. But I hope that in 5 years that people aren't thinking as quickly when they're getting ready for a cookout about going to the local grocery store. I hope the first thought that comes to mind is which rancher am I going to go to today? Or which rancher can I call and get my product in a few days? And that's one of the biggest challenges, inventory management of beef and how much beef it takes. Most people don't even realize, 35 to 50% of a carcass is ground beef. So, if I have 10 people order skirt steaks, I got to harvest 6 whole beef just for those 10 people. And then I got to move all the other products. So we've had some challenges there, but we've really been able to overcome a whole lot of that with growth and getting to scale. But I hope we continue just to touch the lives of others and help them have a safe alternative to their food source.
Yeah, and I totally resonate with that. I'll be continuing to buy from the Florida Beef Initiative, and it's just me here, so 16 pounds of meat in a beef box.
It's gonna last a while.
Yeah, it's lasted me a good bit, and I'm eating meat with every single meal at this point too, just to try to run through it because I'm like, hey man, it's here, might as well. But this whole conversation is making me very hungry, so I have to ask you this question: is out of all the things that you produce and all the things like that, what is your favorite cut of meat or a favorite way to cook it? All that kind of stuff. Like, what brings you the most joy if you're going to a cookout or something like that, and you're bringing some people together? What's the one item that you have to bring to contribute to the group?
Okay, I'm not going to give the answer that most everyone else would give you, which would be ribeyes. When we started our little company, a little quick backstory, I was hell bent to teach people and educate them about other parts of the cow that are really, really damn good besides just eating ribeyes, because you only get so many per animal. And so one of my absolute favorites that I like to cook is picanha. And it comes out of the top sirloin butt. It's in a big old triangle. It's similar to that California brisket that they call the tri-tip. It's a nice, perfect triangle. I do a reverse sear on it. I slow cook it. Some people smoke them. I'm a salt and pepper guy. I don't use a whole lot of different seasoning. And man, I slice it up into steaks. That's what I serve at holidays. So instead of prime rib, you're getting picanha at my house. And two, I want to sell my money cuts. I'm going to try to eat the cheaper ones. So I try to learn how to master that one. And now that I have, I bet we haven't cooked a ribeye in my house in 2-3 months. My best sellers through our company actually are not the ribeyes. People love them. Don't get me wrong, but we've got them hooked on chuck eye and Denver steaks and tri-tips and Terrace Major and all these different things because we provide cooking information and lots of different things in our email campaigns. So we're trying to help people learn how to cook some of this other stuff.
Yeah, man, I need to start to learn how to cook some of it too, because I've had, I have some of these cuts out here where I'm like, all right, well, what's the best way to cook it? So I'm sitting on Google. Right. I might need to join this email list just so I can figure it out myself too. So, how do I do that? Do I just go to your website and
you can go to our website and subscribe to our email list? It's at kncattle.com, KANDCCATTLE.com. And we have social media on everything: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's all KNC Cattle, and we do all kinds of videos. So we show you conception. We'll show you everything at the ranch. We show you the processing plant. We show you cooking demos. So we have all kinds of information out there for everybody.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I'll have to check all that stuff out, and I'll put it all in the show notes too for anybody interested as well. But before I let you go, we're a quarter through the year and we have, obviously 3/4 left of this year. There is kind of maybe some doom and gloom when it comes to the overall macro economy, everything like that. But I am very bullish when it comes to the beef initiative. So, what gets you most jacked up about the beef initiative? And do you have any like plans on going to any of these, beef initiative conferences? What do you guys got planned for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I'm going to go to as many of them as I can. Unfortunately, right now, running my meat company, running our processing plant, and then I work a full-time job on top of all of that too, and manage the ranch. It's been a little bit more difficult, but we're going to start doing a lot more meetups. We do a Kill It and Grill It and a Cattleman's Feast at every single Beef Initiative conference. And so we bring our team of chefs. We have one that works for us full-time, and we give you a demo of what it's like to cook the whole part of the cow or different parts of the cow. We're going to continue doing that. I'm seeing a lot of positive reactions, and from the Bitcoin community, and just from folks that aren't necessarily in Bitcoin. And it's been a perfect exposure because it's a great conversation starter. Kind of that beef and Bitcoin moniker is really starting to ring for folks. But I see us this year. We're going to really, really focus on Texas. We are going to do some traveling out of state, so y'all get to see us in a lot of different places, and probably even see some of our product in Miami. I've had a few folks reach out about wanting to have cookouts or dinners. So if we don't get to make it there, at least I know some of our product's going to be there.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I'll have to figure out where that's going to be because I'm gonna want to crash that party for sure. Because
sure.
While I was at a Pleb Lab, I believe during startup day and everything like that, we had some of your brisket and other things coming into the Pleb Lab, and oh my god, it was delicious. I mean, that's the one thing I do miss about being here in Florida and away from Texas is that you don't get great barbecue here in Florida. So everybody listening, I'm sorry, but I grew up in Texas. I went to school in Memphis. Like, I'm used to outstanding barbecue,
right.
And unfortunately, Florida barbecue doesn't match up. I mean, it's tough, but it is the truth. So, but Cole, you've been very generous with your time, and you're making me extremely hungry talking about all this stuff. I'm really excited about the beef initiative and everything else. So, for the plebs listening out there, what can they do to help you out and help KNC Cattle? Is it just I guess blast off the messages on Twitter, or is there any other way that they can help support you guys? Cole, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry about that. I had myself muted, or I thought I did. For us, shoot us DMs. I'm getting a lot of messages from folks in all different states. We'd love to connect you with ranchers that we know all across the United States. Shoot us DMs, hit us up on any of the social media platforms, and we'll do anything and everything we can to help get that exposure. More than anything, tell people, share the good word, just like we're all trying to do with Bitcoin. All we can do is be advocates and disciples in what we believe in.
For sure. And then check them out on Twitter, right? KNC Cattle, KNC Cattle, then KNCCattle.com, and KNC Cattle everywhere else, right?
Pretty much. Yes, sir.
All right. Awesome stuff. So I'll put all that stuff in the show notes, and give them a follow. Buy their meat on Oshi or some other platform on directly from their website. Go shake Cole's hand and taste some of his product, man. I mean, it's absolutely delicious. You have the green candle stamp of approval, so you can't go wrong with anything that he's got there. So Cole, thanks so much, man.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.